The first signs that something was catastrophically wrong with Michael Turner's body appeared on a humid August morning in Dallas, exactly 23 days after his return from what he had described to his construction crew as the most rejuvenating business trip of his life to Ghana's bustling capital of Accra. The 52-year-old company owner, who had built his reputation on completing complex projects under impossible deadlines while maintaining the kind of physical stamina that impressed men half his age, stood before his bathroom mirror, watching in horror as dark, necrotic patches spread across his torso like some grotesque roadmap of internal decay that defied every rational explanation his methodical mind could construct. The putrid stench emanating from his own flesh was unlike anything Michael had encountered during 25 years of construction work that had exposed him to every imaginable form of rot and decomposition, a smell so overwhelming that even industrial-strength antiseptics and medical-grade deodorants could not mask the reality that his body was systematically destroying itself from within, while his mind remained terrifyingly clear to witness every stage of his physical deterioration. What made his rapidly worsening condition even more bewildering was that Michael had returned from Ghana feeling more energetic and confident than he had in years, reinvigorated by what he believed had been a successful combination of business networking and romantic adventure with Ama Boateng, a beautiful university student whose attention and affection had restored his sense of masculine appeal after the devastating blow to his self-esteem inflicted by his divorce 18 months earlier. Their passionate encounters in her modest Kumasi apartment had seemed like a gift from Providence, arriving precisely when Michael needed validation that he could still attract and satisfy an intelligent, educated woman who appreciated both his business success and his genuine interest in Ghanaian culture and traditions. The rituals and ceremonies that Ama had introduced him to during their intimate moments had felt exotic and meaningful rather than dangerous, creating memories that he treasured as evidence of authentic cross-cultural connection and spiritual awakening. The systematic destruction of his physical health that began 3 weeks after his return to Texas suggested exposure to some exotic pathogen or toxin that American medicine was unprepared to identify or treat, though Michael's recollections of his time in Ghana provided no obvious explanation for how he might have contracted such a devastating and progressive condition. His business meetings in Accra had been conducted in modern office buildings with international health standards. His accommodation at the Golden Tulip Hotel had been comfortable and sanitary, and his interactions with local contractors and government officials had followed the same professional protocols that had protected him during similar ventures in Mexico and Costa Rica. The only unconventional aspect of his Ghana experience had been his romantic involvement with Ama, though their relationship had developed naturally from their initial meeting at a cultural center, where she was volunteering as a translator for foreign visitors interested in traditional Ashanti customs and business practices. Her knowledge of local traditions and her apparent genuine affection had made their connection feel authentic and spiritually significant rather than merely physical or transactional. The progressive nature of Michael's deteriorating condition suggested deliberate poisoning rather than accidental exposure, though the delayed onset of symptoms and the exotic nature of the substances involved created investigative challenges that would require international cooperation and expertise in both traditional African medicine and modern toxicology. Resolved successfully, the isolation that Michael had experienced since his divorce made him an ideal target for criminals who specialized in exploiting lonely American men through romantic manipulation, combined with sophisticated chemical weapons that would cause death weeks or months after initial contact, making investigation nearly impossible while providing perfect alibis for perpetrators who would be thousands of miles away when their victims finally succumbed. The investigation that would eventually uncover the truth about Michael's condition would reveal a criminal network operating across West Africa, using traditional knowledge of plant-based toxins combined with modern romantic manipulation techniques to target successful foreign men who were vulnerable to emotional exploitation and whose deaths could be attributed to tropical diseases, rather than recognized as systematic murder for financial gain. The forensic pathology required to identify the exotic compounds destroying Michael's body would challenge American medical science, while requiring cooperation with African traditional medicine practitioners who understood substances that had been used for centuries in ritual practices, but but were completely unknown to Western physicians and toxicologists. The international scope of the investigation would demonstrate both the global reach of modern criminal enterprises and the challenges faced by law enforcement attempting to combat crimes that exploited cultural differences and traditional knowledge to create untraceable weapons capable of defeating sophisticated forensic techniques. The medical emergency that brought Michael Turner to Dallas Presbyterian Hospital began with his desperate call to 911 on August 22nd, when the necrotic tissue damage had progressed beyond his ability to conceal the severity of his condition from his construction workers and business associates who had begun commenting on the obvious deterioration of his physical appearance and the overwhelming stench that seemed to follow him despite his increasingly frantic attempts at personal hygiene. Dr. Samuel Grant, the emergency room physician who first examined Michael, immediately recognized that his symptoms represented something far beyond standard tropical diseases or conventional poisoning cases, with tissue death patterns that suggested systematic destruction by unknown biological or chemical agents, rather than any infectious process or toxin exposure documented in American medical literature. The comprehensive laboratory analysis that Dr. Grant ordered revealed the presence of multiple exotic plant-based compounds in Michael's blood and tissue samples, substances that were completely absent from North American pharmaceutical databases and appeared to represent sophisticated mixtures of traditional African medicines that had been deliberately administered to cause progressive organ failure and tissue necrosis, while remaining undetectable through standard medical screening procedures. The consultation with toxicology specialists at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center brought additional expertise to bear on Michael's case. Though even the most experienced poison control experts had never encountered the specific combination of compounds that were systematically destroying his body, while leaving his mental faculties intact to experience every moment of his physical deterioration. The investigation into Michael's recent travel history revealed his 3-week business trip to Ghana, though his professional activities provided no obvious explanation for exposure to the traditional toxins that were causing his condition. The systematic nature of his poisoning and the delayed onset of symptoms suggested deliberate administration by someone with intimate access to his food, beverages, or personal belongings during his time in West Africa. The communication with Michael about his experiences in Ghana was initially complicated by his reluctance to discuss the intimate details of his relationship with Ama Boateng, whose romantic involvement with him had been the emotional highlight of his trip, and whom he was psychologically unable to consider as a potential source of his current medical crisis, despite the mounting evidence that his poisoning had occurred during their time together. Linda Harris, Michael's ex-wife, became involved in his medical crisis through their teenage son's concerns about their father's condition, despite the strained relationship that had developed between the former spouses following their bitter divorce proceedings. Her knowledge of Michael's personality and behavioral patterns provided crucial insights for medical professionals attempting to understand how he might have been targeted by criminals specializing in exploiting American businessmen through romantic manipulation. The preliminary toxicological findings confirmed the presence of at least 8 different plant-based compounds native to West Africa, substances that had been carefully selected for their delayed action properties and their ability to cause progressive tissue death while remaining virtually undetectable through conventional medical testing procedures available at American hospitals. The international cooperation required for investigating Michael's case began with inquiries to Ghanaian health authorities and traditional medicine practitioners who might possess knowledge of the specific toxins identified in his system, though the response revealed significant challenges in bridging Western medical science with traditional African healing practices that operated according to completely different theoretical frameworks and diagnostic approaches. The psychological evaluation conducted as part of Michael's treatment revealed the extensive emotional manipulation he had experienced during his relationship with Ama, including traditional ceremonies and rituals that had been presented as expressions of cultural sharing and spiritual connection, but were actually sophisticated techniques for creating psychological dependency while providing opportunities for covert administration of toxic substances. The deterioration of Michael's condition continued despite aggressive medical intervention, as the exotic toxins had caused irreversible damage to his liver, kidneys, and circulatory system that American medicine was unable to counteract effectively without specific knowledge of antidotes and treatment protocols that existed only within traditional African medical systems. The breakthrough in understanding Michael's exotic poisoning came through collaboration with Professor Kwame Asante of the University of Ghana Medical School, whose expertise in traditional Ashanti medicine enabled him to identify the sophisticated mixture of plant-based toxins that had been used against Michael. Professor Asante's analysis revealed that the compounds were derived from several rare plants sacred to traditional healers, substances that had been used for centuries in both healing ceremonies and, when improperly administered, could cause the exact pattern of delayed tissue death that was destroying Michael's body. The specific combination of toxins identified in Michael's system indicated not only deep knowledge of traditional African pharmacology, but also modern understanding of how to create time-release delivery mechanisms that would remain dormant for weeks before triggering massive organ failure. This hybrid approach suggested that Michael had been targeted by criminals who combined ancestral knowledge with contemporary poisoning techniques to create weapons that were both untraceable and ultimately fatal. The investigation into Ama Boateng's background revealed that her claimed identity as a university student was partially fabricated, with academic records showing only sporadic enrollment and no current student status at the time of her relationship with Michael. More concerning was her connection to Kwesi Owusu, a local man with suspected links to criminal networks that specialized in targeting wealthy foreign visitors through sophisticated romance scams combined with traditional poisoning methods. Detective Inspector Samuel Mensah of the Ghana Police Service emerged as the primary investigator on the African side of the case, bringing specialized knowledge of criminal enterprises that operated across West Africa while targeting foreign visitors through elaborate deception schemes. His experience with similar cases involving European and American victims provided crucial insights into operational patterns and the international connections that enabled such sophisticated criminal activities. The surveillance operation that Detective Mensah organized revealed ongoing criminal behavior by both Ama and Kwesi, including current romantic relationships with other foreign men visiting Ghana for business or tourism purposes. The systematic nature of their activities and the evidence of coordination with accomplices in other West African countries indicated that Michael's case was part of a much larger criminal enterprise rather than an isolated incident of opportunistic crime. The pattern of victimization that emerged through the investigation revealed that the criminal network specialized in targeting middle-aged American businessmen who were traveling alone and appeared emotionally vulnerable due to recent divorces or personal losses that made them susceptible to romantic manipulation. The selection criteria were remarkably specific and suggested professional-level analysis of psychological vulnerability factors rather than random criminal opportunity. The financial investigation accompanying the criminal inquiry revealed sophisticated money laundering operations that enabled the criminal proceeds to be converted into legitimate assets while avoiding detection by banking authorities who might monitor unusual financial transactions. The complexity of these financial arrangements indicated substantial resources and professional assistance that extended far beyond what individual criminals could typically accomplish independently. The medical consultation between Dr. Grant and traditional Ghanaian healers provided crucial insights into potential treatment approaches for Michael's exotic poisoning, though the advanced state of his condition and the irreversible damage to his organs made complete recovery impossible, despite the enhanced understanding of his condition that international collaboration had achieved. The diplomatic complications arising from investigating crimes involving traditional practices required careful coordination between American and Ghanaian law enforcement agencies, creating challenges that tested existing cooperation agreements while highlighting the need for enhanced protocols when investigating sophisticated crimes that exploited cultural differences and traditional knowledge for criminal purposes. The deterioration of Michael's physical condition accelerated during the investigation period as the traditional toxins continued their systematic destruction of his body, despite aggressive treatment protocols that had been developed through collaboration between American physicians and African traditional medicine practitioners. The combination of Western medical intervention with traditional antidotes provided symptomatic relief, but could not reverse the fundamental organ damage. The psychological impact of learning that his romantic encounter in Ghana had been a calculated criminal attack was devastating for Michael. creating additional trauma that complicated his medical treatment while forcing him to confront the reality that someone he had trusted, with intimate access to his body, had been systematically poisoning him throughout their relationship. The arrest of Ama Boateng required extensive coordination between Ghanaian and American law enforcement agencies, as her activities had been carefully concealed through the use of multiple identities and locations that were designed to prevent detection by authorities investigating her network's systematic targeting of foreign victims. The operation to apprehend her and Kwesi Owusu was complicated by their connections within Ghana's traditional healing community and their ability to move freely between rural and urban areas where different law enforcement jurisdictions created opportunities for avoiding capture. The evidence gathered during the arrests revealed the comprehensive nature of their criminal operation, including detailed records of multiple American and European victims who had been targeted through romantic manipulation and subsequently poisoned with traditional substances that would cause delayed but ultimately fatal consequences. The systematic documentation suggested professional organization and careful planning that had enabled the network to operate for several years while avoiding detection by international law enforcement. The interrogation of both suspects revealed complex motivations that combined economic desperation with genuine belief in traditional practices, though their willingness to use sacred healing knowledge for criminal purposes demonstrated moral corruption that extended beyond simple financial necessity. Ama's explanations focused on cultural misunderstanding and economic inequality, while Kwesi claimed that foreign visitors deserved consequences for their exploitation of African resources and people. The international legal proceedings required unprecedented cooperation between American and Ghanaian judicial systems, creating procedural challenges that tested existing treaties while establishing new precedents for prosecuting crimes that involved traditional practices and crossed international boundaries. The complexity of proving deliberate poisoning with substances not recognized in Western legal systems created novel evidentiary challenges that required innovative approaches. The medical testimony that Dr. Grant provided during legal proceedings included detailed forensic analysis of the exotic toxins found in Michael's system, explaining how traditional African medicines had been perverted into weapons that could defeat conventional medical detection while causing progressive organ failure that would ultimately prove fatal despite aggressive treatment efforts. The victim impact statement that Linda Harris provided on behalf of Michael, who was too ill to participate directly in legal proceedings, documented the comprehensive destruction that the poisoning had caused not only to his physical health, but also to his business operations and relationships with his teenage sons, who were struggling to understand how their previously strong father had been reduced to someone requiring constant medical care. The expert testimony about traditional Ashanti medicine that Professor Asante provided helped the court understand the sophisticated knowledge required to select and combine the specific toxins used against Michael, demonstrating that his poisoning represented deliberate perversion of sacred healing traditions rather than accidental misuse or cultural misunderstanding. The evidence of other victims that Detective Mensah's investigation uncovered revealed that Michael was part of a systematic pattern of victimization that had affected dozens of foreign men over several years, with criminal proceeds being used to expand the network's operations while also funding increasingly sophisticated poisoning techniques and victim recruitment methods. The psychological evaluation of both defendants revealed personality disorders and cultural conflicts that explained their ability to maintain intimate relationships with victims they were simultaneously murdering, demonstrating the complex intersection of traditional beliefs with criminal behavior that characterized their systematic exploitation of foreign visitors. The international media coverage of the arrests and legal proceedings brought worldwide attention to criminal networks operating across West Africa, while highlighting the vulnerability of business travelers to sophisticated schemes that exploited both romantic relationships and cultural curiosity for criminal gain. The sentencing phase focused on determining appropriate punishment that reflected both the premeditated nature of the murders and the cultural complications involved in prosecuting crimes that perverted traditional practices for criminal purposes, creating precedents that would influence future cases involving similar cultural and legal challenges. The death of Michael Turner occurred on September 15th, nearly 4 weeks after his initial hospitalization, and 2 months after his first exposure to the traditional toxins that had been systematically destroying his body, while his mind remained clear enough to understand the full horror of his situation. His final days were spent in intensive care surrounded by medical professionals who had exhausted every conventional and experimental treatment option, while providing him with dignity and comfort within the limitations imposed by his deteriorating condition. The autopsy conducted by Dr. Grant and consulting forensic pathologists confirmed the devastating extent of damage caused by the traditional African toxins, with tissue samples revealing cellular destruction that was both systematic and irreversible. The post-mortem examination also identified additional compounds that had not been detected during Michael's lifetime, suggesting that the poisoning had been even more sophisticated and comprehensive than initially understood by medical professionals. The international investigation that had been prompted by Michael's case expanded significantly following his death, as law enforcement agencies across Africa and North America recognized that his murder was part of a larger criminal enterprise that posed ongoing threats to Western business travelers and tourists visiting West Africa. The coordination required for investigating and prosecuting such crimes created new frameworks for international cooperation. The trial proceedings that followed Michael's death were elevated to murder charges, with prosecutors arguing that the sophisticated nature of the poisoning and the extended suffering it caused demonstrated exceptional premeditation and cruelty that deserved the most severe penalties available under both American and Ghanaian legal systems. Linda Harris's transformation from concerned ex-wife to determined advocate for justice reflected the impact that Michael's murder had on everyone who knew him, as she channeled her grief into ensuring that his death would lead to meaningful changes in how international law enforcement approached crimes involving traditional practices and romantic manipulation of foreign visitors. The scientific research that emerged from Michael's case contributed to enhanced understanding of traditional African toxins, while advancing medical knowledge about treatment approaches for exotic poisoning cases that might affect future victims. The collaboration between American medical researchers and African traditional healers created opportunities for cross-cultural cooperation while providing practical benefits for poison victims. The diplomatic implications extended beyond individual criminal prosecution to include enhanced cooperation agreements between American and African governments, creating frameworks for sharing information about criminal networks while supporting economic development and cultural exchange that would reduce conditions enabling criminal enterprises to flourish in vulnerable communities. The media attention that Michael's case attracted brought international awareness to sophisticated criminal techniques while educating potential victims about warning signs of romantic manipulation and the importance of maintaining caution when forming intimate relationships during international business travel. The victim advocacy work that emerged from Michael's case included specialized support services for families affected by international crimes involving traditional practices or exotic substances, addressing unique challenges faced by relatives navigating complex legal systems while dealing with medical conditions not understood by conventional Western medicine. The legislative changes prompted by Michael's case included enhanced penalties for crimes involving traditional practices used for criminal purposes, while providing increased resources for international cooperation in investigating and prosecuting sophisticated criminal networks that exploited cultural differences to avoid accountability. The ongoing investigation into the criminal network led to additional arrests across multiple African countries, revealing connections between various organizations that specialized in targeting foreign visitors through different exploitation methods, demonstrating the need for sustained international cooperation in combating such sophisticated enterprises. The conviction of Ama Boateng and Kwesi Owusu represented a landmark achievement in international cooperation for prosecuting crimes that involved traditional practices and cross-cultural criminal activities, though the sentences reflected challenges in determining appropriate punishment for unprecedented crimes that tested both Ghanaian and American legal systems. Ama received 25 years imprisonment, while Kwesi received 30 years, with both sentences including provisions for victim compensation and asset forfeiture. The asset recovery proceedings revealed substantial profits generated through systematic targeting of wealthy foreign men, with proceeds invested in legitimate businesses across Ghana and neighboring countries in ways that made complete recovery difficult, despite international law enforcement cooperation. The financial investigation demonstrated the industrial scale of operations that had funded multiple criminal networks. The international law enforcement cooperation, essential for investigating and prosecuting Michael's case, continued through ongoing efforts to identify other members of the criminal network, while developing intelligence about similar organizations operating in other regions where vulnerable foreign travelers might be targeted through romantic manipulation and traditional practices. The medical advances resulting from research prompted by Michael's case included development of rapid diagnostic tests for traditional African toxins, potentially saving lives of future victims who might otherwise be misdiagnosed or receive inappropriate treatment. The collaboration between American toxicologists and African traditional healers created understanding of natural compounds with both criminal and legitimate applications. The victim support services established in response to Michael's case provided specialized assistance for families affected by international crimes involving traditional practices, addressing unique challenges faced by relatives, navigating complex legal systems while dealing with medical conditions not recognized by conventional insurance and healthcare systems. The diplomatic agreements negotiated as a result of Michael's case created permanent frameworks for cooperation between American and African law enforcement agencies, establishing protocols for information sharing and joint investigations that would improve responses to future cases involving criminal networks operating across international boundaries. The academic research inspired by Michael's case contributed to enhanced understanding of how traditional knowledge could be exploited for criminal purposes, while advancing legitimate scientific inquiry into natural compounds with therapeutic applications, creating opportunities for beneficial research while helping prevent criminal exploitation of cultural practices. The corporate security consulting industry that emerged provided specialized services for companies, sending employees to regions where sophisticated criminal networks might target foreign business travelers, including risk assessment protocols and security training addressing specific techniques used by romantic manipulation networks. The insurance industry response included enhanced coverage for victims of exotic poisoning and international crime, while implementing improved risk assessment procedures for travelers visiting regions where traditional criminal networks might pose threats to foreign visitors and business professionals. The legislative initiatives supported by victim advocates included enhanced penalties for crimes involving cultural practices or traditional knowledge, improved resources for victims of international crime, and strengthened cooperation agreements facilitating investigation and prosecution of sophisticated criminal networks. The ongoing monitoring of similar criminal activities revealed that while specific networks had been successfully prosecuted, other organizations continued operating using similar techniques while adapting methods to avoid detection strategies that led to previous arrests, highlighting the need for continued vigilance. The establishment of the Michael Turner Memorial Foundation represented Linda Harris's transformation from grieving ex-wife to international advocate for victims of exotic poisoning and traditional practice exploitation, creating a permanent institution dedicated to supporting affected families while funding research and prevention programs, addressing sophisticated techniques used by criminal networks targeting foreign travelers. The International Conference on Traditional Practices and Criminal Exploitation that the Foundation sponsored annually brought together law enforcement officials, medical researchers, traditional healers, and victim advocates from around the world to share knowledge about criminal techniques while developing effective prevention and prosecution strategies that respected cultural practices while combating their criminal exploitation. The research initiatives funded by the Foundation contributed to enhanced understanding of traditional African toxins while advancing development of antidotes and treatment protocols that could save future victims' lives, with findings shared freely with medical professionals and law enforcement agencies worldwide to maximize protective benefits. The training programs developed for law enforcement agencies included specialized techniques for investigating crimes involving traditional practices and cultural exploitation, while providing officers with understanding of psychological manipulation techniques used by criminals to exploit emotional vulnerability in their victims. The victim support network that grew from the Foundation's work provided ongoing assistance for families affected by similar crimes, while maintaining advocacy pressure for continued improvements in international cooperation and victim protection services addressing unique challenges posed by crimes involving traditional practices. The medical research collaborations established between American institutions and African traditional healers created opportunities for beneficial scientific cooperation, while improving understanding of natural compounds with both criminal and therapeutic applications, contributing to advances in toxicology and pharmaceutical development. The diplomatic initiatives supported by the Foundation included enhanced cooperation agreements between Western and African governments, creating frameworks for information sharing and joint investigations that would improve protection for international travelers while supporting economic development and cultural exchange. The educational materials produced provided practical information about recognizing romantic scams and understanding cultural contexts that might make travelers vulnerable to criminal exploitation, while raising awareness about sophisticated techniques used by international criminal networks. The corporate partnerships developed with international businesses created systematic approaches to traveler safety and risk awareness, providing specialized training and support services that helped protect employees and clients encountering sophisticated criminal networks during international travel. The psychological research supported contributed to enhanced understanding of romantic manipulation techniques, while advancing knowledge about effective treatment approaches for victims of systematic deception and criminal exploitation, requiring specialized therapeutic interventions. The legislative advocacy undertaken included support for enhanced international cooperation agreements, improved victim protection services, and strengthened penalties for crimes exploiting cultural practices for criminal purposes, creating legal frameworks balancing cultural respect with victim protection. The 10-year anniversary of Michael Turner's death marked a significant milestone in international efforts to combat criminal networks, exploiting traditional knowledge and romantic manipulation to target foreign victims, with the Memorial Foundation having become a recognized leader in victim advocacy, research funding, and international cooperation, contributing to meaningful improvements in law enforcement responses. The medical advances resulting from Foundation-funded research included standardized treatment protocols for exotic poisoning cases and rapid diagnostic tests, identifying traditional African toxins in emergency medical settings, potentially saving lives of victims who might otherwise receive inappropriate treatment or delayed intervention. The international law enforcement cooperation, essential for investigating Michael's case, evolved into permanent frameworks for combating criminal networks, exploiting cultural practices, with specialized units in multiple countries working together to identify and prosecute sophisticated criminals targeting foreign visitors through romantic manipulation and traditional weapons. The victim support services enhanced in response to Michael's case continued providing specialized assistance for families affected by international crimes involving exotic weapons or cultural exploitation, addressing unique challenges faced by victims and relatives navigating complex legal and medical systems. The diplomatic agreements negotiated as a result of Michael's case continued facilitating cooperation between Western and African governments, while supporting economic development and cultural exchange programs, addressing social conditions enabling criminal networks to operate. The academic research inspired by Michael's case continued advancing understanding of traditional toxins and their applications, while contributing to enhanced knowledge about psychological manipulation techniques and cultural contexts, making individuals vulnerable to criminal exploitation. The corporate security industry that emerged provided ongoing services for businesses operating internationally, with risk assessment protocols and security training evolving to address new criminal techniques and operational methods. The insurance industry's response led to enhanced coverage options for victims of exotic poisoning and international crime, while implementing improved risk assessment procedures and prevention programs helping protect travelers from sophisticated criminal schemes. The legislative changes prompted by Michael's advocacy included enhanced penalties for crimes involving cultural exploitation, improved resources for international cooperation, and strengthened victim protection services, addressing unique needs of individuals affected by cross-cultural criminal activities. The ongoing monitoring of criminal networks revealed that while specific organizations had been successfully prosecuted, similar enterprises continued evolving and adapting techniques to exploit new technologies, while incorporating traditional methods difficult for conventional law enforcement to detect. The psychological treatment protocols developed through Foundation research provided specialized approaches for helping victims recover from romantic manipulation and exotic poisoning, while addressing cultural and medical complexities, making conventional therapeutic interventions insufficient. The transformation of Linda Harris, from victim advocate to internationally recognized expert in cross-cultural crime prevention, represented the positive legacy emerging from Michael's tragic death, as she channeled grief and determination into meaningful work, protecting other potential victims while honoring her ex-husband's memory through practical crime prevention efforts. The research network established by the Foundation continued generating valuable insights about traditional toxins and their applications, while contributing to enhanced understanding of criminal techniques and prevention strategies. With findings shared freely with medical professionals, law enforcement agencies, and potential victims worldwide. The international cooperation frameworks developed in response to Michael's case provided models for investigating other sophisticated crimes, exploiting cultural differences, demonstrating that effective prosecution was possible when governments committed to meaningful cooperation and resource sharing. The victim advocacy movement growing from Michael's case included specialized support services and legislative initiatives, continuing to improve protection for individuals and families affected by international crime while maintaining pressure for continued enhancements in law enforcement cooperation. The educational impact of Michael's story extended beyond formal prevention programs to include widespread public awareness about dangers of romantic manipulation and traditional practices being exploited by criminal networks, contributing to increased vigilance among potential victims. The medical community's enhanced understanding of traditional African toxins and their treatment had saved numerous lives through improved diagnostic capabilities and therapeutic interventions, while contributing to broader scientific knowledge about natural compounds with both criminal and beneficial applications. The corporate security consulting industry continued providing valuable services for businesses operating in regions where criminal networks might target employees or clients, with evolving risk assessment protocols reflecting ongoing research and intelligence about criminal techniques. The diplomatic relationship strengthened through investigation and prosecution of Michael's case continued facilitating beneficial cooperation between Western and African nations, while supporting economic development addressing root causes of criminal network recruitment. The psychological research prompted by Michael's case contributed to enhanced understanding of trauma recovery for victims of sophisticated manipulation, while advancing knowledge about prevention strategies, helping potential victims recognize and avoid criminal targeting. The legislative and policy changes resulting from Michael's advocacy continued influencing international cooperation and victim protection efforts, while providing models for other jurisdictions seeking to enhance capabilities for investigating and prosecuting sophisticated international crimes. The ongoing impact of Michael's case demonstrated that individual tragedies could be transformed into lasting positive change through sustained advocacy and international cooperation, creating protective systems benefiting future generations of travelers and business professionals. 15 years after Michael Turner's death from exotic poisoning administered by a sophisticated criminal network in Ghana, his tragic story continues, serving as both a warning about deadly techniques employed by international criminal organizations and an inspiration for comprehensive responses that can emerge when individual tragedy is channeled into sustained advocacy for victim protection and international cooperation. The Michael Turner Memorial Foundation has become a globally recognized institution that has directly assisted over 800 families while funding research and prevention programs, contributing to systematic improvements in law enforcement capabilities and medical treatment protocols. The medical advances resulting from research inspired by Michael's case have revolutionized emergency medicine's approach to exotic poisoning, with diagnostic tests and treatment protocols now standard practice in hospitals worldwide, enabling rapid identification and intervention that has saved dozens of lives when victims of traditional toxins received appropriate medical care instead of being misdiagnosed. The international law enforcement cooperation essential for investigating Michael's murder has evolved into permanent frameworks for combating sophisticated criminal networks, exploiting cultural practices, with specialized units in multiple countries, sharing intelligence and coordinating operations that have disrupted numerous criminal organizations and prevented countless potential victims from being targeted. The victim support services enhanced in response to Michael's case continue providing specialized assistance for individuals and families affected by international crime involving exotic weapons or cultural exploitation, addressing unique medical, legal, and psychological challenges that conventional support systems cannot handle effectively. The research collaborations between American medical institutions and African traditional healers that grew from Michael's case have created opportunities for beneficial scientific cooperation while advancing understanding of natural compounds with both criminal and therapeutic applications, contributing to pharmaceutical development and toxicology knowledge, benefiting global medical practice. Linda Harris's transformation from victim advocate to international expert in cross-cultural crime prevention has provided a model for channeling personal tragedy into professional expertise that protects others while contributing to meaningful social change through sustained advocacy and educational efforts, raising awareness about sophisticated criminal techniques. The diplomatic agreements negotiated as a result of Michael's case continue facilitating cooperation between Western and African governments while supporting economic development and cultural exchange programs, addressing social conditions enabling criminal networks to operate, creating positive alternatives to criminal activity. The corporate security industry that emerged provides ongoing protection for businesses operating internationally, with risk assessment protocols and prevention strategies that have evolved continuously to address new criminal techniques while supporting legitimate economic development and cultural exchange. The insurance industry's enhanced coverage options for victims of exotic poisoning continue providing crucial support for affected families, while incentivizing prevention efforts and risk mitigation strategies helping protect potential victims from sophisticated criminal networks. The legislative changes that Michael's advocacy helped achieve have strengthened international cooperation, while enhancing victim protection services and providing meaningful penalties for crimes, exploiting cultural practices, creating legal frameworks, balancing cultural respect with victim protection. The educational materials and awareness campaigns produced by the Foundation continue providing valuable information about recognizing romantic manipulation and understanding cultural contexts that might make travelers vulnerable to criminal exploitation, contributing to prevention efforts, helping potential victims avoid dangerous situations. The academic research growing from Michael's case continues advancing understanding of traditional toxins, criminal manipulation techniques, and cross-cultural crime patterns, while training new generations of researchers, law enforcement professionals, and medical practitioners who will continue improving responses to sophisticated international criminal activities. The psychological treatment protocols developed through Foundation research provide specialized approaches for helping victims recover from romantic manipulation and exotic poisoning, while addressing cultural and medical complexities, making conventional therapeutic interventions insufficient for such unique criminal victimization. The story of Michael Turner serves as a permanent reminder that pursuit of professional success and personal fulfillment through international travel, while enriching and valuable, must be balanced with awareness of sophisticated predators who exploit normal human desires for connection and adventure to facilitate devastating crimes using traditional knowledge and modern manipulation techniques. His legacy lives on through the hundreds of lives saved by medical advances prompted by his case, the thousands of potential victims protected by enhanced awareness and prevention programs, and the systematic improvements in international law enforcement cooperation that continue disrupting criminal networks before they can claim additional victims, ensuring that his suffering was transformed into lasting positive change, benefiting vulnerable individuals worldwide.